Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I would have never thought that those words would ever leave my mouth again. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say this before I even get started with this video. If I seem nervous or a little anxious, it's because I am. I'm very nervous and anxious right now because I never thought that I would be in front of this camera ever uploading another YouTube video again, but here we are. And of course, I had to make it feel like a Brits Brew video. So of course, we have to include the coffee. This has been my go-to order for over a year now. It is the medium iced coffee from Dunkin' with 3 caramel swirls, oat milk, and 1 shot of espresso. I'm just gonna give a forewarning now that this video is probably going to be very long. There's gonna be a lot that I talk about in this video. So go ahead and grab a blanket, grab a snack, grab your own coffee, whatever you guys want, because you guys are gonna be seated here for a while. I don't know what the title of this video is going to be, but this is my official testimony video. And the timing of me filming this video is pretty crazy because 14 years ago on this date that I am filming, it is August 19th, this exact day, 14 years ago, I created this channel. And I feel like if you have been here from the beginning when I first started making my pregnancy videos till now, if you have been an OG longtime viewer and supporter of Brittany and Baby when it was Brittany and Baby, which I will forever always be, you have probably seen the many ups and downs that I have gone through, all the different stages of life that I went through as being a teen mom, being pregnant, having 3 kids with somebody, separating from that person, meeting somebody new, marrying that person, having 2 other children, becoming a mom of 5, and so many stages of life, from building our house, almost getting a divorce, going through depression, going through a child with a terminal diagnosis. You guys have seen it all. You have literally seen it all. And I was at the point when I made my last video, my goodbye video, which I truly thought was my goodbye video. We'll get there. We'll talk about that. I felt like that stage, that chapter of my life was completely closed. But here we are. And you're probably wondering how we got here and what has transpired the last year and a half, I think. It's been longer than a year. I feel like time has gone by so fast, I have no idea. But I know it's been at least a year. But I know a lot of you guys are wondering what I've been up to, what's going on. And if you follow me on my other social media, like TikTok and Instagram, then you kind of already know the gist of things. But stay with me because I think I am finally at the point, actually I don't want to say I think, I know I am finally at the point where I am ready to put everything out there from my last video to date and everything in between. I feel like it's my time to talk about it all. So I think it's finally time for Brittany to speak up for Brittany, to put Brittany's story out there, Brittany's testimony out there. So like I said, buckle up, it's going to be a lot. I'm going to try not to be emotional in this video. I have already been crying, just so many feelings and emotions about making this video. Without further ado, let's go back to my last video. So let's start at my last video when I said I'm done with YouTube, goodbye, this is it, this chapter of my life is over. A lot of things started to spiral after that. There was a lot of rumors that were going around. There was a lot of things I was dealing with my personal life. When I had made that video, I was very much so at peace with that decision. There was a lot of things that were also happening behind the scenes that I never brought to light or talked about, which kind of also coincides with why I left as well. I think I was at a point where I was just tired of not having any kind of privacy or not having a private life. YouTube was all that I knew. It was basically my identity. I had put so much of my worth into my public figure image, if that makes sense. It was after I put that video up, I felt good because I was like, yes, I can finally have the privacy that me and my family have been just desiring. Because I think at that point I've been on YouTube for over a decade. I was just ready for some kind of normalcy. Well, that kind of took a turn for the worse because I was also in this position where I'm like, crap, okay, what am I gonna do financially? All I've ever done to support myself was YouTube. I never had a real job. So I say real job loosely, but I think you guys kind of understand what I mean. And I didn't have any kind of backup plan at the time. Frank was not working. It put me in a really hard spot. I was actually doing some UGC content, user content on the side, and that was actually going okay. It was a little bit of an income, but nothing compared to what we needed to make. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna jump all in with this. On a limb, was like, I hope this works. Thankfully it did, but that was a huge stress. Any kind of financial stress that you have in your life, it's gonna cause a lot within you, within your family, your marriage. It's bound to happen. So that was a huge stress once I left. I also had somebody in my personal life that was leaking very personal information, and I'm not talking about information that you could probably find from like maybe my Facebook that I had friends and family on, like my personal Facebook, and was getting information from there. This was somebody that was in my circle, things that were only said between us and that they would only know unless they knew me or was with me in person when I said it or when those things happened. So that was kind of happening around that time. I had somebody in my personal life leaking this information. It's one thing if it was information about me, but it was also information about my children. And that's when I knew I had to get away from social media, because I'm like, okay, this is getting way too far. But also it made me become very paranoid and distrustful in my personal life, where I started to look at everybody. It got to a point where I was so paranoid where I was like, okay, I told this person, like I was trying to backtrack on who I told what and who it would be coming from, and I could not figure it out. I even hired a cyber security firm because it had gotten that bad to figure out where this information was coming from. It made me feel very isolated because I started to shut everybody out around me, and I now know who the person is, or I should say persons. I know who they are now, but it made me so paranoid that I blamed a family member that I trusted so deeply, and it cost me my relationship with that person. And that was a whole thing in itself, because I had basically blamed somebody that didn't need to be blamed. It was like mourning somebody that was still alive. It was very, very painful. So I had the financial stuff, I had that stuff happening, and then it started trickling into Aria. These people were coming after her and attacking her, and that's also where the security firm came in as well. And there was a lot of things being said about me and a lot of things floating around. People were reaching out to my family members and like close family members, parents, in-laws, you name it. And this is the time, this was the beginning of where everything kind of started to come to a head, was the beginning of January of 2024, when I really started to feel like, okay, I'm not as okay as I thought I was when I left. All of these things were still happening. Like, yes, I wasn't on social media anymore, but there were still so many different things happening. And at this time, I was also still in therapy, so I was still working through a lot of deep-rooted trauma that I had buried so deep within myself. I was still dealing with that. I think a lot of you guys kind of saw that transpire a lot over the last 2 years before I left, that I was really dealing with some stuff, and that's why I was in therapy so much. And I had even cut out other family members because of it. So at this point, I'm feeling like, even though I had therapy, I was still feeling so lonely and isolated. I didn't have anybody I could talk to or relate to. And at the time I was also not feeling very trustworthy to a lot of people. So I really just stayed to myself. Of course I had Frank to support me, but I was in a really bad place mentally. When you talk about the lowest of lows and feeling completely lonely and your mind is in such a dark place that you feel like not even like the brightest light could do anything for you. You're at a place where, why am I even here? Like, you're questioning your existence. That is exactly where I was. It was a very scary, dark, secluded place. I feel like the beginning of 2024 was such a blur for me because I was dealing with all of those things that I just mentioned collectively all at once. Like, it was still continuing to happen. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, some of the decisions that I made were nobody's fault by my own. A lot of decisions that I made right around the time when I left, I am far from proud of. These are decisions I have fully taken accountability for. All of that to say, I knew deep down the decisions I were making were not right, but I was doing it out of this very desperate state. That's the best way that I can explain it. I also want to say this too before I go into the moment I officially reached my rock bottom. When you are on social media for so long, and in my case, it was my identity, it was where I financially supported myself, you have this sense of self where you put a lot of your worth into what people are saying to you, your views, your subscribers, your image. You put a lot of worth into that. And for the first time in my life, before I had even joined YouTube when I was 17, for the first time, I actually had to face who I was. I had to face who Britney was without YouTube, without validation, without people hyping her up or being her yes man, or I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. And I didn't know who I was. I thought I knew who I was, but I truly did not know who I was until I started to get stripped of so many different things, which we'll get to. But let me just talk about my rock bottom, where everything kind of just came to a head. It had finally reached that point where I couldn't mentally handle what was going on. It was like the walls were closing in on me, and I was already not in a very good mental space at all. I just remember one night, it was something that happened where I think people were posting pictures of Aria on a site, pictures that they had gotten from her social media that she had that was monitored by me and was plastering everywhere. And I think that's when I was like, okay, this has gone way too far. It just like felt like this virus infiltrating my life. And I just remember I got in the shower that night when that happened, and I had a complete breakdown, like a complete come apart breakdown. I just remember crying out to God. Mind you, Britney did not believe in God. You guys have never heard me talk about God. I have never been a super spiritual person. I grew up around religious people in my life, family members, but it was never implemented. It was never a thing that I believed in ever. I was more on, the universe spiritual side and like crystals. It was just never anything that I cared to know about or believe in. I thought I was totally fine on my own until this moment in the shower, of course. I didn't need God, okay? I didn't need God in my life. I had it figured out. I could do it on my own. That was kind of my mentality. But in that moment, I didn't have anything else to turn to. Nothing to turn to. I could not even save myself from the hell I was feeling. And I just remember I was crying out to God, basically pleading with him, asking God, hey, if you hear me, if you're real, like if you're the real deal, like everybody says that you are, if you're real, please help me. Show me. You show me a sign or show me whatever, okay? Like I was like basically bargaining with God at that point. Like I didn't know what else to do. But if you're real, show me that you're real. And if you show me, if you give me a sign, you show me, I'll give it all to you. I will give it. And this is literally crazy coming from me because I had never, you know, there might have been times where maybe I prayed to God, but my intentions, my motives were never in the right place at all. Like it was never genuine. And in this moment, there was something different about it. And I would have never pleaded for God ever, but I was in such a desperate rock bottom situation that this was the only option for me. So I remember doing that. I had my crying session, felt good, got it out, went to bed, forgot about it completely. I just put it in the back of my mind. It was one of those things like it just felt nice, right? Like I prayed to God, I cried, you know, what can I do? It's another day, we have to keep moving. Okay, so I had to take a quick break because my battery died, so I let it charge for a little bit. So I'm hoping I can still get through the rest of this video without having to plug it up to charge again. So we'll see. There's so much I still need to talk about, but we're gonna pick up where I left off. So after I had that moment in the shower, feeling the lowest of lows, the following day, I forgot about it. I remember Frank and I, we were out in the garage. There was some stuff that had recently happened that added to the layers of stress and things that we were dealing with. So I just remember Frank was on the phone with somebody talking about said situation, and you know, I was in the garage area just eating my breakfast, just sitting there, even though I just remember Frank was on the phone. It was really stressful. We were, you know, dealing with some legal stuff, so it was a lot, I remember. But I remember looking out across the street, and if you guys know me in my personal life, you probably have known that I'm a very introverted person. I'm a very kind person. If you come up to me, I will say hi, I will be nice, but I don't go out of my way to approach people. It's just not in my nature. I'm just very reclusive like that. I just, you know, I kind of just leave people alone. I keep my head down. You know, I've met some people in our neighborhood, but for the most part, I just kind of stay in my own lane. Don't, you know, associate with anybody and just kind of do my own things. But I remember seeing my neighbor come out of her house with her new little puppy that she had gotten, and I was just, you know, eating my breakfast, listening to Frank's conversation on the phone, and I kind of see her lingering for a little bit. So I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just taking a while for the dog to go to the bathroom or, you know, whatever they were doing, but she's definitely lingering. Frank has talked to her before, actually. We've done some stuff when we had our engraving business. We did some etching for her, so he kind of knew her. I had never spoke one word to this woman at all. You know, she's a neighbor, but she's basically a stranger to me at the same time. So I get up because I'm done eating, and I go around to the house to throw out my bag of food that I had. You could say I was probably comfort eating. And, you know, I see her getting closer to the sidewalk because she's across the street from me. So I see her getting closer to the sidewalk. It's just like, okay, she's looking at me, like she's lingering there. I feel like there's this like awkwardness, you know when somebody's like standing there and you're kind of like in their proximity, but there's just this silence and you feel like, you know, hey, how are you? Like throw up a wave so it's not as awkward, you know, like there's like this level of acknowledgement. So I felt this internal pressure to say something, which again, not like me at all. I don't go out of my way to talk to people, maybe wave or say hi, but for the most part, I'm just like, you know, head down. She has the cute little puppy right there, so I'm like, okay, well, I'll direct the attention to the puppy. And I was just like, oh, what is his or hers name? Like, I'm like kind of like saying this across the street. I'm like, oh, what is the name? And then all of a sudden the dog starts coming towards me. Okay, like it's a small dog, but the dog starts coming, it's on a leash, so the lady just is following the lead of the dog. I'm like, oh gosh, she's gonna come over here. I don't want it to sound bad, but it's like now I gotta like talk, and I'm like kind of socially awkward as it is. I'm like, I hate small talk and conversation. but you know, I see her coming over. I'm like, well, maybe the dog could smell my food and that's why it's coming over here. You know, I'm trying to rationalize this in my head. I'm like, I've never talked to this woman. Why is she coming over here? We start talking about the dog. Okay, I can't remember what the dog's name was. And just saying, oh, it's just so cute, because it was like a little miniature, I want to say it was like a Yorkie or something. Just talking about the dog and how cute it is, making small talk at that point and just asking about the dog and everything. And Frank's still on the phone, right? And I was like, oh, I thought maybe the dog was, I made a joke to like make it not so awkward. I'm like, I thought maybe the dog was trying to be nosy to hear what Frank was saying, because Frank was kind of heated on the phone, right? Or, you know, maybe she was trying to listen in. That's what I was thinking. And maybe the dog, or she was curious or something. I don't know. I made a stupid joke. It didn't make it less awkward. It made it more awkward. And I was explaining to her like the situation, just like kind of like broadly, not getting into any details. And she was like, oh, we recently dealt with something like this before. So she started opening up about this, you know, situation as well, like how she's gone through it too. So, you know, we're conversing about that, talking about that. At this point, Frank had got off the phone and joined us. So I was like, okay, yes, he is coming over here because Frank is very sociable, okay? He talks to anybody and everybody. He could talk to literally anyone, listen to their whole life story. You know, we can't even go anywhere sometimes without him recognizing somebody, because he's just that sociable and just meets anybody and friends anywhere that he goes. I actually admire that a lot, because I'm not that kind of person, but he's very personable in that way. So I'm like, okay, yes, he can come over here, take over the conversation, and I can kind of just like stay on the sidelines a little bit. So he's opening up to her about the conversation and the situation we're dealing with. You know, they're conversing and talking to each other, and I'm kind of spacing out, call it ADD or whatever, or disassociating, I don't know. But, you know, I have a moment where I kind of like lose interest in what they're talking, not in a rude way, but it just, you know, I'm just like, okay, I'm so over the situation that's already happening anyways. Why this never had dawned on me before, I don't know. I've never noticed it. I've never like put two and two together at all. But they're talking, you know, this is happening on the sidewalk in front of our house too. But, you know, I look over for whatever reason, randomly, and I look at this woman's address. Now I know that sounds so weird and bizarre. Like, okay, what? Like her address. But I look at her address, and it literally, like, as soon as I saw her address, something within me clicked. It was like from here to the bottom of my toes. It just like felt like this wave through me, like this, almost like this confirmation, okay? That I just got hit with a ton of bricks. I see her address, and it is 444. That is her address. Again, why that has never clicked with me, I've never noticed it before and taken interest, I don't know. I just don't go and look at everybody's, I mean, I know my address, but I don't look at other people's addresses and their numbers. So I see that, knowing what those numbers mean to me, because I had literally, not even 6 months ago, got those same numbers tattooed on my wrist. The meaning behind this tattoo, this 444 tattoo, I couldn't even tell you why I really got this, because I've never even really, I guess, not associated, that's not the right word. I've never really resonated a lot with these numbers. I randomly got it on my 30th birthday. I've actually resonated more with the numbers 1111. You know, I have so many screenshots in my phone where it's been that time I've looked at it, I've screenshotted it. So this was such a random tattoo, wasn't even planned, paid so much for this stupid tattoo, but the meaning behind it, if you believe in spirit numbers, which this has such a different meaning for me now, but it means that your guardian angels are always watching over you and protecting you. So I really resonated a lot with the meaning of those spirit numbers. So when I see that, knowing what that means to me, knowing in that moment clicked with me, I literally asked for a sign to show me that you're real. I'm standing on the sidewalk with a stranger, my neighbor I've never talked to, just randomly started talking to me. And in that moment, it made sense. It made sense. That in that moment was my confirmation. Frank and her are still talking while I'm having this realization in my head. And then I proceeded to do something else that I would normally never do. and that was interrupt their conversation. I would never do that. And I said, I hate to interrupt, but I think I was meant to talk to you today. Now, the fact that that even came out of my mouth, saying to somebody, because that's just not how I talk to people at all. I'm interrupting the conversation and now I'm saying like, I was meant to talk to you today. Like in my head, I'm like thinking she's gonna think I'm crazy. Actually, I think I said, please don't think I'm crazy, but I was meant to talk to you today. And she looked at me with such sureness on her face. Like I didn't even catch her off guard at all. Like normally, you know, somebody would be like, what? You know? And I meant to talk to you today. And I told her, I prayed out to God last night to give me a sign. And I think that you are my sign. And again, she looks at me with so much sureness, like she was placed there, like she knew that she was meant to talk to me too. And, you know, I told her, I looked at your address and it's the same numbers that I got tattooed on my wrist. And she just looks at my wrist and my numbers. She's like, those are my numbers too. And actually that house has a lot of meaning because of those numbers and that address. And I'm thinking in my head, what? Like, I feel like I'm like in this alternative reality right now. We were supposed to have this conversation, and Frank in the meantime is looking at me like he's looking more confused. He's literally told me later on, he's like, Brittany, it looked like you saw a ghost. You were completely white, like you just got gut punched. And that's exactly how I felt. You know, she was telling me, she didn't go into detail, but she was telling me about how those numbers meant a lot to her and how she, you know, had her surrendering moment with God and was going into detail about that. And I just knew in my heart, mind, and soul in that moment that she was my confirmation, 100%. That was basically God saying, listen, you got these numbers, right? These are your numbers. I'm going to give you somebody with those numbers that I'm going to work through to confirm that for you. I had that moment literally feeling, like I said, like I was gut punched, and I'm like, okay, I just got my confirmation. Now I've got to hold my end of that bargain, right? How I promised that if you show me a sign, said sign, I will basically devote my life to you. And that's exactly what I did. From that day, when I just got that sure feeling, like you ever have those moments where something comes over to you that you just know, right? It's like this, such a sure confirmation feeling. That's exactly what I was feeling. I just knew. After that day, I bought my first Bible. I went to church for the first time. Now, I've been a handful of times as a child, but went to church as an adult for the first time in my life. And when I tell you, my life, okay, did a 180 from that moment. I'm telling you, like, I was headed one direction, went a totally different direction. There's no other explanation than that it was God and God himself, because if I couldn't even save myself, who was gonna do it for me? Nobody could have done it for me other than God. That same month, this was in March of 2024 when I got that confirmation. In that same month, I started to go to church. Like I said, I bought my first Bible, but this was all happening around the same time. And as you guys know, I used to drink. I used to drink a lot. I used to drink to cope, for social settings, for anxiety, for escape. I have been in so many different scary, questionable, horrible situations because of alcohol. But I am so proud to say that it's been a year and a half now, and I have been sober since March of 2024. I have had no alcohol, a drop of alcohol. I went from having it every single day. I'll put it this way. I wasn't a typical, like what you would view a typical alcoholic, but I was very much so dependent, like every single night. every single night drinking alcohol. I would love to go in a deeper video about that if you guys would love to see that and me talk about my sobriety journey. But that's how I also knew that it was God, because I went from one day having alcohol every single day to the next day not desiring it at all. At all. It was like a switch. It was like black and white. I have not touched alcohol since it was actually Easter of that year. I think it was like March 30th or 31st. Was the last time that I had alcohol. So I really think it had to come from me, because my kids, you know, they went to Christian preschools. They already had that foundation. I've always let them decide that. I never wanted to push anything to them. And then Frank with his background. So I feel like I was the missing piece to the puzzle. And truthfully, Jesus was that missing piece for me. Never in a million years would I think I would say that, because I used to mock religion. I used to mock Christians. I never wanted to believe in Jesus. I thought he was made up. I was what you would call a typical atheist or agnostic for 30 years of my life. And since then, I have just immersed myself in literally everything, and my life has just made a 180 once I surrendered my life to Jesus. I've really devoted myself to showing what a true Christian is, because I've grown around Christians my whole life, but nothing ever made me want to be a Christian. So I've really tried to be an example for that and live my life out as a true Christian. And it has not been easy at all, but it has been the missing piece to my whole life that I have been searching for, that I tried to search for in alcohol and for attention and for other distractions in my life that I have done in the past. It was the hole that I never knew needed to be filled and can only be filled by Jesus himself. And you know, and with all of that being said, I also have some notes, because even though I felt very isolated when I left social media, after I deactivated my Instagram and Facebook and left YouTube, after I had found my faith, I started to chart and note down a lot of the things that I was learning at the time. So I do want to talk a little bit about that, because during this time I was also really seeing who my friends and family were, and my circle got really, really small, the core people in my life, because I wasn't posting on social media anymore. People don't reach out as much because that is their means to reaching out to you, even if they have your phone number or not. I really saw who was there for me when it came to my friends and family. That taught me a lot when I left social media. And another thing was that I found God, or technically he found me, but it, like I said, has been truly the missing piece that I've needed my whole life. And there's so much more I could talk about in that topic. If you guys have been following me on TikTok or Instagram this past year, then you kind of have seen a lot of the way that I've been living out my life now. I can't take credit for that at all. I cannot. That is all because of the grace that I have received. I no longer had a stress or anxiety or obligation to post like I did before. And in return, all that time that I spent in social media and creating content and doing my sponsorships and stuff, I was able to reinvest that time back into myself and into my family. And because of that, my relationship, my marriage, and my relationship with my kids have definitely gotten a lot stronger because of it. And I just feel like I'm just more available now. My head is more clear. I can be more present. And in return, it's definitely made me a better wife and mom. And I also felt like I could just freely do things now. There wasn't this obligation to post everything that we were doing and document everything, and I didn't have to look for validation from others, and I could still record memories and take pictures of the kids without feeling like I had to share it with the rest of the world too. And honestly, and even though it was really hard in the beginning deactivating everything, because I found my faith, it also stripped everything away from me, all the bad things that were damaging me, my family, and my soul, all the drinking, all the outlets that I was looking for escape, all the things that I had so much pride in with, like the way that I looked, and just actually loving Brittany for Brittany, and not this person that I created in my head that she should look and act a certain way. So it really required a lot of stripping away all those harmful things. And it, like I said, was not easy, but all of that mess I have now been able to turn into a message, and all the tests are now my testimony. And even Brittany at her lowest, when I was at that rock bottom, feeling like I had no escape, that is when I realized I was going to let that, all that bad stuff happen to me, I was going to use that to share as my testimony to people, that when you think that there is no hope left, like this is it, this is as good as it's gonna get, I'm isolated, I'm in a really dark space mentally, when you're feeling like you're at your rock bottom, know that Jesus is at the bottom with you, and he wants to be your rock. And that's what I realized. And if I talked about everything that Jesus has done for me since, you know, I found my faith and started walking on this journey with him, I would be here forever. But some of the amazing things that have happened since then: I stopped drinking. Frank is no longer drinking as well. Frank was able to go back to work, which is only a miracle God could do himself. So he has now gone back to work. I got my first big girl job. I say that with quotes because it's my first job working outside of YouTube with an actual corporation, and I am working at home remote, so it's been truly a blessing to be able to work from home still, be here with the kids, and to be able to have a job that I feel so much more secure in. I know when I'm getting paid, and I think God was like, okay, it's time to grow up a little bit, Brittany. It's time to get, you know, an actual job. And God has really blessed me with that. And another blessing is that Nolan is still doing amazing. And I can only credit that to everybody who prayed for Nolan. If you are watching this video right now and you prayed for Nolan, for him to be healed and for his health and for his condition, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and confirm to you that your prayers are definitely not going unheard. And I know that it is by the grace of God that he is doing so incredibly well. So I just want to thank you so much, so much for that. If you've prayed for him, if you prayed for my salvation, your prayers are also answered. So thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for praying for me. And this video and me finding my faith with God is proof of that, of prayers being answered. I've had so many messages of people saying that they've prayed for me. So I just want to say thank you. I did not think I was going to get emotional in this video, but I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. It just goes to show that once Jesus snatches you up, how much beautiful things that he does for your life. And when you devote it and surrender it to following him, how much purpose you will have. So that is the only reason why I am doing this video right now, is because I want to show everybody that I went from one way, one ugly, nasty place, and because of putting my faith into Jesus, he completely turned my life around and set me on a whole different path. And the most beautiful and best thing about that is available for everybody. It is free to anybody who wants it. And that is why I am sharing this video today. If you've made it to the end of this video, I want you to know that there is always hope. And I know for a fact I am living proof of that. And before I end this video, I just want to say I don't know where I'm gonna go with this channel. I know I just had to put this video out here because I had to put my truth and my testimony out there. So I don't know what the next step is for this channel. I don't believe that I will ever go back to the same content I did before, all the family vlogging and showing the kids as much. You know, I'm really going to have to think and pray about the direction I want to go. All right, so I think this is my sign to wrap up this video because my battery is blinking again. But I definitely think I could do a Q&A and maybe just even play it by ear. Not even put the pressure on myself because I still am working a full-time job. Maybe just go with the flow. I think that's what I can do. But let me know what you guys think, what your thoughts are on future content. And I'm so looking forward to your comments on this video. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll probably see you in the next one. Bye guys.